Hi everybody, it's Jerry from the Military Collectibles Shop. You've seen me in such great hits as What's New at the Military Collectibles Shop and Talk Like a Pirate Day. But today we're actually doing a new series. It's called Military Collecting 101. And this is actually geared toward newer collectors. Doesn't matter what age you are, if you're 6 years old or 60 years old, there's a facet of military collecting for you. And what we found is that a lot of times Mark and I were answering the same basic questions over and over. So I thought it might be a good thing to kind of do a primer, because we've been doing this for so long. A lot of this, what we consider base knowledge, has been so ingrained with us. So I thought we might share different aspects from a very basic level of collecting military stuff, in the hopes that more people get into collecting military stuff. Seems like a reasonable explanation. Today I'm actually going to be talking about patches. Patches for me is what got me into the military hobby. When I was about 9 years old, I started collecting, actually I found my grandfather's collection of World War II U.S. military patches. And that got me started into the whole collecting world. I was really fascinated by them. Patches come in a wide range of shapes, colors, numbers. There's symbology, and this was all very new to me, and I was perplexed by it all. Now back then we didn't have the internet. There were actually very few books written on American patches, so there wasn't a great place to find a lot of information on these patches, unlike today. So today you can actually find a lot of information out about the patches relatively easily once you know what you're looking for. Some of the pieces that I still like to see, though, are the period pieces that came out. This one's from the Chicago Tribune, where they published all the different patches, because during the war it was important for the people on the home front and the people who were serving to know what all these other units represented and what these patches meant. So the units themselves, the patches allowed the men to distinguish themselves from other groups of people in the service. So you'll see a wide range of patches. And while patches, like rank patches, were actually used as early as the Civil War, the first time we really see the shoulder unit patch being worn started pretty much in World War I with the Americans. But in World War II, it really took off and kind of became what we're used to seeing nowadays. So there's a lot of different types of patches. There's a lot of different kinds of patches that you can collect. So I'm going to talk a little bit about all of those. So one of the things that people like to try to do is they'll either collect as a set. You kind of collect them all, because the divisions, the military divisions, the groups of large groups of soldiers were formed into divisions, and they were all sequentially numbered: 1st Division, 2nd Division, 3rd Division, 4th, and so on. All the way up through the 104th Division at the time. There are some gaps, and we'll touch on those, but a lot of times people want to collect all of the divisional patches, and it's actually an attainable goal. So you can actually find original World War II vintage patches, and complete them all. Some people also like to collect kind of historically significant divisions, like some divisions, the 1st Division, for instance, first to fight. A very historic division, saw a lot of action in World War I and World War II. They landed early on in North Africa, fought through Italy, also landed on the beaches of Normandy. The 2nd Division also fought through France. The 3rd Division fought in Italy. The 4th Division was at Normandy. And so on and so forth. Now, some of the divisions, like the 98th, actually, they have it listed here wrong. I believe this is the 97th Division. Maybe they're right, maybe I'm wrong. Anyways, they spent the entire war in Hawaii. So it's a tough gig. But again, now remember, Hawaii had just been attacked by the Japanese. So that wasn't it was a cushy assignment. The threat of attack and invasion was ever present. So you know, so some people collect like just the divisions that were at Normandy. You know, the 1st, the 4th, the 29th, the 30th, the 90th. Yeah, and there were some other ones. The airborne divisions. Those are popular. Another way people collect is by what we call variants. Now, most of the World War II patches are actually what we refer to as cut edge. They were embroidered on a twill material and then cut around the edge to make the patch. So on the modern patches, what we'll actually see is what's called a marrowed edge, where they actually like embroider a little frame around the patch, and they leave kind of this telltale tail on the patch that lets us know that that's a marrowed edge patch. And those are later. Those are post World War II. Actually, most of these are going to be from the 60s and later. A lot of the World War II patches were used up through the 50s. You know, it wasn't like right at the end of World War II they just stopped using the patches. So you'll actually see patches that were used. A friend of mine was actually in charge of the 84th Division rail splitters here in Milwaukee, and he was still issuing patches to the men in the 80s and 90s that came out of a 1944 dated box. So that was kind of cool. One of the things that collectors look for after they've got all the basic patches down are what are known as the variants. So this is what we mean by variants, is a variant in the manufacturing style. So while most of the patches you'll encounter will actually be made here in the United States, there are a bunch that were made up wherever the servicemen were seeing service. This particular one was made in Germany, and we can tell because of the type of embroidery that was done on that patch that patch was made in Germany. We'll also see what we call theater-made patches, and those are also variants, where the original one's an embroidered, machine-embroidered patch, and then the locally made ones, in this case, is a printed patch. Now these are from the China, Burma, India theater, and these are one of the patches that a wide array of variants exists in. So these are really fun to collect by themselves. And these can be had still relatively inexpensively. We've also got some British-made patches where it's printed. And this one's an Italian-made 3rd Division patch on silk, or a silk-like material. Even in the American-made patches, we have variants. There are some that are called greenbacks, where they were made early on in the war, and the bobbin thread, the take-up thread on the back, instead of being the very white, trying to find a good example, very white bobbin thread, because again it's going to be on a uniform, it's not going to matter, but they were still using OD green thread. Well, as soon as America got involved in the war, they realized we're going to need all this OD green thread, we're going to need all this dye, because we need to turn everything green. So, and that's kind of around the time when Lucky Strike stopped being, cigarettes stopped being green in their packs, and they went to white packs, because they actually needed the dye for the war effort. So anytime you find a greenback patch, you know, that's a very early patch. So some collectors collect those variants. There's also some variants between the what are known as OD border patches. So while some patches more commonly have the OD border patch, a little green around the edge, some do not. So that's a variant that collectors look for. You know, they want to get it both in the standard and the OD variant version. Now, one of the things I really liked about patches when I first started collecting was the symbolism that was there. You know, because each of them told a story. It was almost like reading a hieroglyph, where you would look at the letters, the numbers, you know, what does it actually mean? You know, this is the 82nd Airborne Division, and the 82nd used the AA from World War I because it was actually called the All-American Division, because it was made up from people from all over the country. Prior to that, groups were kind of localized and pulled from kind of specific areas. Like a lot of the 32nd Division people were from the Wisconsin and Michigan area. A lot of the 33rd Division people were from Illinois. So it's neat to see the symbolism. Now some patches are a little easier to decipher than others. 100th Division. Okay. This one's kind of neat. It's a 4th Division patch, and we've got the 4 branches of ivy. But why ivy? Because if you think about it, the Roman numeral for 4 is IV. So they were known as the Ivy Division. Okay, kind of neat. We also see patches like the Armored Division triangles, where they actually started in World War I, and they were made up of 3 different branch colors. The blue of the infantry, the yellow of the cavalry, and the red of the artillery, because they felt that that branch of service contained the power of all 3 of those. So they adopted that as to their armored triangle. We'll see command patches, where we have these various, kind of spur-looking things. This is a 1st command. In these cases, we actually want to count the points to see which service commands those are. And during World War II, the service commands were kind of broken up into different areas in the United States. Some patches a little more obvious, Aleutian Islands. Some are a little more cryptic, like this 30th Division patch, Old Hickory. But we see the XXX, and that was for the 30th. Again, Roman numerals. The 95th Division, a 9 with a V. These were known as the Victory Division. Also the Iron Men of Metz, after the famous Metz battle. But a lot of symbolism in all of the patches. The 45th Division. The 45th is actually a Thunderbird, and they were from out west, New Mexico, I believe, somewhere out there. And it's interesting because their original patch was actually a swastika. Not a lot of people know that. Up until the 30s, when the Nazis took it over. And then the army said, hey, we're not going to use that anymore. The interesting thing, they used the swastika because that was the Native American symbol for the Thunderbird. So what they did is they stopped using the swastika, and they came up with a more stylistic version of the Thunderbird. So they kind of retained the unit without using the swastika. This is a World War I 1st Army patch. Now, an army is made up of several divisions, or in charge of several divisions. So this one's kind of neat because it has what's known as the branch of service color on the inside. And this one is maroon and white for medical. So these are actually great to collect, and collectors love these because they can assemble a whole bunch of different 1st Army ones, all with the different branch of service colors. Other ones are a little more, kind of on the nose. The 69th Division, you can kind of look and see the patch. Now, some are a little more cryptic. This one was from the Manhattan Project, where it's actually a thing splitting an atom. How you can maintain a secret project where you have the patch on your sleeve, I don't know. But this one is kind of neat. It actually spells out Ohio, O-H-I-O. So, shout out to Fritz. This is actually an interesting patch. It's known as the Skarwoff patch, and it was kind of a combined Army and Air Force thing post-war. But the interesting thing about this patch is this was actually used by the Hollywood people in Battlestar Galactica, because they couldn't think of one on their own. The Red Arrow, the 32nd Division, one of the most difficult patches to sew on a uniform. The 91st Division, little tree. This is from when the U.S. Army was in North Africa. It sort of resembles, kind of one of the minaret kind of tops. The 90th Division. Actually, it was a T and an O for Texas, Oklahoma. But what a lot of the men's called themselves was tough hombres. All right, 8th Army. So a lot of symbolism in the colors, in the shapes, in the number of points on the star. in the design. You know, some of them harken back. The famous 101st Division. This one's always kind of interesting for me because this is actually, not a lot of people know this, but this is actually, the bird on there is actually Old Abe. Now, Old Abe was an eagle that the American, Wisconsin 8th Civil War Regiment carried into battle with them, and it annoyed the hell out of the Confederates. They kind of kept him as a pet, and he was kind of a mascot. And then after the war, he kind of survived, and they ended up, he was stuffed, and he was kept at the Capitol in Madison, Wisconsin. During the last couple months of World War I, the 101st Infantry Division was actually formed as a headquarters company here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Unfortunately, the building doesn't stand anymore, but we know where it was. And they utilized Old Abe as their patch. The interesting thing about the early patch is that it actually had flames under it, which is a whole other story. But eventually, the 101st was deactivated at the end of World War I. It wasn't reactivated until World War II in 1942, when they used the Old Abe patch again to become the Screaming Eagle's famous 100 Airborne Division. Oh, the other thing I want to talk about is one of the more collectible patch types and variants is what we call bullion patches. So these are theater-made patches that were handmade by a lot of local artists, where they use the metallic thread to make them stand out a little more, make it a little flashier, make it a little fancier. So this is a 15th Air Force one that was probably made in Italy. Or right around there, where they embroidered the 15 onto, and they embroidered the wings, possibly actually right over an existing patch. So they kind of enhanced a patch with bullion additions. I hope you've enjoyed this little brief introduction into the world of collecting patches. If you're a new collector, I hope you found it interesting and informative. If you're an old collector, I hope you might have learned something new. At any rate, new collectors, old collectors, there's a great organization called ASMIC, the American Society of Military Insignia Collectors, that has a lot of resources. You can find them on the web. They're always looking for new members, and if you love patches, those are the guys to talk to, because it's a great club to belong to. Alright, so thanks for watching Military Collecting 101. This is a new series brought to us by the Military Collectibles Shop, and we're going to be doing more of these. We've already got a couple more planned to do one on U.S. military helmets and German military helmets. But if there's anything specific that you want us to cover, drop us a line and let us know. We're always happy to share what we know with you. Alright, so subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, visit our website. We're just in the process of upgrading it, so be sure to stop by militarycollectorshq.com. Until I see you again, I'm Jerry, this is the Military Collectibles Shop, and history matters.